Morning, everybody. My name is Connor Willis. I work with Alberta Wildfire for the Alberta government, Forestry and Parks. And I'm truly humbled and honored to be here with you this morning to host a fireside chat. Usually I'm out there fighting forest fires. I should be right now. I'm not sure what exactly I'm doing here today. There's smoke in the air, but I'm very privileged to be here to speak with you and share this moment with Greg. Greg, former fire chief and director of protective services with the Municipality of Jasper. Greg Van Tighem. Greg showed up to Jasper in 1979, as he mentioned, really to find some casual work and to live the life of a ski bum. Probably still skiing those slopes these days. But Greg got a job at the Husky gas station, and where he apprenticed there as a mechanic.
How'd you know that?
So Greg, just an aside, if I got a little bit of road noise in the front right side tire, if you don't mind having a look after, that would be great. Thanks, Greg. But in 1992, Greg joined the volunteer fire department as a way to give back to his community. And kind of the rest is history there. Hey, Greg.
Yeah.
So Greg went through his list of accolades. He's been very involved in the community through work and outside of work. Greg is the vice chair of the Jasper Victim Services Unit for over 23 years. Friends of Jasper Culture and Rec Society, 9 years plus. He mentioned he is the president of the Canadian Legion. He's a chair of Ducks Unlimited. He mentioned he guides big game hunts, so I'm looking forward to Greg taking me out in the bush. He's a crisis counselor and a extreme advocate for mental health, which is very important in this business. He's also marriage commissioner. He's former director of the Alberta Fire Chiefs Association. He's a champion fundraiser, a marathon cyclist. I have trouble maybe going 10K, but he goes to the Arctic to Tech for fun, I guess. And he's been supporting MS Society for over 18 years as a regional advisory council board of director. And with that, he was leading the MS he was the leading fundraiser for MS in 2020, and he won the Governor General's Meritorious Service Medal in 2016 for fundraising there. And Greg's had a significant career in emergency management, as we know. Some notable events that he's been involved with. He mentioned the Chenaman Fire in 2022, but he also helped the community navigate through the 2010 Pyramid Riding Stables explosion, which was a significant natural gas explosion, and the 2015 Excelsior wildfire, as well as a number of other emergencies. But Greg hasn't really retired. It's just a shift. He still works part-time for the municipality, or it seems like full-time, or more than full-time, as a training officer and structural protection specialist, and does a whole bunch of other work out there. So that, folks, again, it's my honor to host this fireside chat with our revered guest, Greg Van Tighem. And so, Greg, please welcome Greg with a round of applause, folks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So before I start the discussion, I just want to mention again, if you would like to direct a question through this conversation to Greg, please do so using Slido. And at some point here, we'll jump to some of those questions for Greg. So, Greg, looking back on the past 46 years, if you were that wide-eyed 19-year-old boy pulling up to that bus stop in Jasper again, would you still get off that bus? Do you have any regrets over the years?
Of course I would. He's referring to, there was an article posted somewhere that told about me arriving in Jasper as a 19-year-old from a Greyhound bus from Calgary with nothing but my skis and a backpack, and there was 2 feet of fresh snow on the ground. And I literally thought, I'm in heaven. This is like, I skied at Pascapoo at the time, Canada Olympic Park, I guess it's now. Most of my life, that's where I skied, and then I came to Jasper, and what I do, it's an amazing place. It's a beautiful place. It's a small town in a big city kind of a way because of the tourism aspect, but you go off the beaten track in Jasper, and it's just like a small town anywhere else. Tremendous school system, tremendous sports, minor sports program. Lots of activities outside, obviously, in nature. So, yeah, I would definitely get off that bus And if you haven't been to Jasper, I recommend it. Even though that we did, suffer a lot of damage, it's still a beautiful place. And encourage people to come and support the community in their rebuild.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Greg, you've been going through some significant changes in recent years after turning over a new leaf and stepping back from leading Jasper Emergency Services. You were recently quoted in the Jasper Local as saying, "I am not retiring, I am rewiring." And I think that's such an incredibly powerful statement upon thinking about that. I think one can apply that same statement to emergency managers and how we need to evolve in our changing environment. Perhaps we need to rewire how we are preparing for and mitigating disasters going forward. With respect to those disasters will impact our communities and those things that we value. Greg, do you see a parallel here with your own philosophy on life and emergency management?
Yes. When I said I was rewiring, I was speaking to, I had got to a point in my career where I felt that I had accomplished a lot, but I felt that it was time for a change, not only for myself, but for the organization. And to be honest, 30 years as a first responder plays on you a little harder than some careers do. And, I thought I'd better take care of my own health first. And I was at the age where I could retire, and, things were lined up for me. So that's when I really started to consider, well, take an early retirement, let someone else step into the role, breathe some new fresh air on the responsibilities, and then I can do the same with my life. So that's what I did. And I like I said, I had ended up with 6 jobs in about 2 months, but they were all on my own terms, and I wasn't carrying a radio or wearing a pager, and it actually turned out to be a lot of fun, especially the marriage commissioner part of it. That's something that is always a very positive atmosphere. It's a lot of fun. That's something I actually never thought I would be doing, but enjoy it quite well. And so yeah, rewiring in my circumstances, I think was the best thing I could do, because busier now than ever, but living the dream, I'll tell you. I can't wait for the ski hill to open.
Thanks, Greg. And I wanted to get to this question. You have some very deep roots in Jasper, and you know the community better than anyone in this room. Can you tell us about the resiliency of the community of Jasper and its people?
Well, a lot of my friends lost their homes. A lot of them had families. A lot of them lost their homes and their businesses. Some just lost their businesses, not their homes. But even the people that didn't lose their homes have gone through a tremendous loss and are going through a tremendous loss. And the things like soil sampling and permit applications being turned down and insurance companies changing their policies are a tremendous burden on people that are already carrying a tremendous burden. But through it all, the people are staying strong. Everybody I've talked to has a positive attitude. Everybody, in a way, they've kind of bound together even stronger. It's particularly the people that have had loss. They seem now to have a connection with each other where they didn't before. But the community has come together. We just had the anniversary 2 weeks ago, large gathering at the Centennial Park. And it was tremendous to see all the positive vibe in that park. It was just amazing. Everybody's maintaining a positive attitude, looking towards the future, which, some people thought initially the evacuation, they're going to be back home in 3 days. Well, then when they did get back home over a month later, some of them didn't have a home to come back to. So then they're thinking, well, we'll rebuild this year. Next year we'll be back in our homes in 2 years. Now it's sounding like it's going to be 5 years. So all these things keep getting piled on people, but the positive attitudes remain, and I think the communities come together even stronger. So, yeah.
Thanks, Greg. So I'm going to take a question from the audience here to get that started. Layden asks, as a researcher on wildfire spread modeling, I'm curious about how operational decisions are made in real time. What are the key indicators that prompt an evacuation order? I imagine factors like rate of spread and fire direction play a critical role, but what other patterns raise the most concern?
Well, specific to Jasper, probably 15 years ago, in fact, I think it was the first time that I involved Parks Canada in the writing of the evacuation plan, which, probably should have done that a lot sooner. But so we were sitting at the table, and myself and a fellow by the name of Dave Smith, Landon Shepherd, and we started talking about what we called trigger points. And it was a term that, I'm sure it's a common term, but I pulled it out of my back pocket, because what I meant by a trigger point was we need to establish a way to say when the fire gets to a certain point in certain conditions that we do something on our end. So for example, if the fire is, say, 30 kilometers south with these conditions, then we will automatically assemble the ECC and start looking at things. Or it gets to this, then we will say we'll issue an evacuation alert. So we established the trigger points, and that it got a little tricky, to use the word, but it got a little challenging to come up with the sort of the criteria for that point. But what we ended up with was basically it was basically distance, and pretty much everything around Jasper is extremely flammable. Very continuous forest, very dense coniferous forest, and a lot of beetle kill. At the time that we were doing this particular version of the plan, the beetle kill was in the red stage, so even more crucial. So we did come up with identified trigger points. So for example, this event we just had it last year, when the fire was at the South Campground, that was a trigger point for an evacuation alert. So that happened almost immediately. That was within 2 hours. And then it was an hour and a little bit later that it was an actual evacuation order because the fire kept coming. So yeah, I'm probably going off topic here. I can't remember the whole question, but basically we established trigger points and designed that into our evacuation plan.
I think you only wrote that plan, rewrote it 14 times, you mentioned earlier.
Yes, that's right. And then I actually was not allowed to use the word trigger points. I kind of chuckle about that, but somebody in the higher end of Parks Canada didn't like the word trigger. I don't know if it triggered them or they just didn't like it, but so we changed it, and I think it was action point after that. So.
Yeah, I think as somebody who developed similar plans as well, trying to set trigger points for I would say 100th plus percentile fires is a little bit. I mean, where do you set that trigger, right? So yeah. Getting some questions here, kind of in the theme of on the industry side of things, on the power side. So, can you talk a little bit about emergency firefighting operations there in relation to the loss of distribution infrastructure and transmission infrastructure and power disruption? How did that impact firefighting operations and emergency response? And is this infrastructure being built back more resiliently?
So first of all, Cabin Creek was the first part of town that succumbed to fire. And like I said, that was basically some embers came in on the outside of town, ignited combustible roofs and decks and fences and houses, and then it went structure to structure. Fortunately, in Cabin Creek, it was all underground service. So there was no immediate threat to firefighters at that time. In the older part of the west end of town, when that started burning, a lot of the lines were in the alleys and they were above ground on poles. That was a lot more dicey as far as being a responder goes. In most cases, though, when the poles started going, they were tripped and there was no real immediate worry after a few minutes with power. As far as improvements, I think you asked about improvements one of the big ones is the pole wrap now has been pretty much decided it's all going to be metal wrap. The fire retardant mesh does work in certain circumstances, but in both the fires that we've had in the last 4 years, the fire was so intense that it did not work. But the metal does, so that's going to be a change. And the other one is, and excuse me, I don't know all the terminology, but the fuses, shoot, I can't think of the name of them, but there's multiple different types of pole fuses where when they shut or close, a lot of times they would send a shower of sparks down to the ground, which could start a grass fire. Pretty much all those fuses have been switched out to non-sparking. There's someone in the room here that probably tell me the right name. I know particularly there's 3 brands that we're using in Jasper, but that's an upgrade that's been ongoing, and I'm assuming will continue. So that, to me, that's huge, because over the years in my career, I've had a number of fires that have been caused by power lines, usually from trees, and then arcing and grass and dry conditions. But so I think the 2 are the fuses and the wrap, as far as I know. And the other thing too is ATCO came up with a policy of build back better. So a lot of the services that were above ground, where they could, when they did the repairs, they put them underground, which makes a huge difference to firefighter safety.
No, that's great, Greg. Yeah, I think non-combustible fuses are a big change that industry in this province and other jurisdictions have been making. And you talked about pole wraps, and we've seen that where they're, I think, in areas where they're very successful, where the vegetation is a bit lower, but when you have crown fire that is hundreds of feet in the air, you pretty much have to wrap the entire pole cross arms to have that be successful. So, there's some questions here about, I think, how we might do things differently if we went back in time. So in light of your experiences and that you and the community had been through in the past years, what would you tell industry leaders, academia here, students, other people in this room, to help them prepare for a similar event? If you were still in command, how would you rewire things differently for Jasper going forward?
Well, it's a new world out there. In the last 10 years, the world has changed substantially, and I'm speaking specifically to changes in weather and climate. In the early part of my career, we had a lot of wildfires in Jasper. Rarely did they burn at huge intensity, and never did they ever impact the community. There were times where they came close to structures and we had to do structural protection, but we never saw the intensity that we're seeing now. So the world is different. The fires we're getting now, or the season's longer, the fires are more intense and they're more often. In my own world, I mean, I'm now retired, fortunately, in that regard, but if I wasn't, I would be taking this a lot more serious. I'd be much more prepared, and that's not just the municipality, but also an individual homeowner and an individual business person or an agency person. We just need to look at the world in a different light now, because it's a different beast out there, and things are changing, and we need to change faster to be ready.
Absolutely. Thanks, Greg. There's a lot of interest in here. You mentioned earlier that Parks Canada wasn't authorizing larger right-of-way clearances. Has that changed since? Do you know? Has this event helped support some of the changes to the electrical utility code, allowing for increased clearances?
I hope so. I don't know for a fact, but I'm assuming that from the 2024 incident that would be one of the major recommendations that were set forth from ATCO, because that's been an ongoing issue for years. There was a time in my career where we couldn't cut a tree down without a permit and without permission, and it was quite a bunch of hoops to jump through to get that permit or that permission. And I know, dealing with ATCO, because I did work closely with ATCO for a number of years, is that they were in a sense banging their head against the wall a lot, trying to widen their right-of-ways. And that's just the way it was in the old guard with parks, is you couldn't cut a tree down. And now that's obviously changing, or has to change. I know that when they built the transmission lines coming in after the plant was shut down, the right-of-ways are I think they're 3.5. So that's a huge improvement there. But there's still some of the old ones. But having said that, there's two locations that were troublesome before where they've put the lines underground now too, so that's made a big change. So I think ATCO personally is probably looking at more going underground where they can.
Yeah, thanks, Chet. I think if we could bury every line out there, we would, but that's a big cost to that. Questions. Jasper had one of the leading, I would say, Fire Smart programs in Canada. They're one of the first. They had applied a lot of the program. You mentioned the Fire Smart program there, and I appreciate you bolstering that there in your presentation. With respect to the fire moving into the community and the treatments that were in place, did you see reduced spread, more manageable fire behavior when the fire actually encroached into town with respect to some of those prescribed fire thinning and Fire Smart treatments that were done?
So both the Fairmont property and the town site were very similar in regards to pre-treatment and active Fire Smart programming. So I can basically cover them both off in one. But so what we did in Jasper is we reduced the fuel load around the perimeter of town. So we took a distance, and it depended on the density of the forest, and we thinned the trees and out to a certain distance. And the idea behind that was, if normally when you get a big forest fire or wildfire, it's what they call a crown fire. So it's burning not just on the ground, but also right along the tops of the trees in the crowns. And when you reduce the fuel load of the forest, the idea is that it brings that fire down to the ground. And that does a couple of things. Obviously, it makes it safer for firefighters on the ground to do things, but it also reduces the intensity of the fire and reduces the embers that fire is going to transport ahead of it. So we did that all around both the Fairmont and the community. I would have, and I've said this publicly, I would have liked to have done more. I would have liked to push that out further. At the time we were doing it, and it was over quite a few years, that wasn't possible. We did what we could based on what we were allowed to do. There was a joint project with the municipality and Parks, which I was the manager of the municipal side of it. Parks held the authority, so it was kind of like they were more in charge than we were. So yes, I would like to push that out further. There's talk about, people say, well, just put a 3-meter fire break around every community in Alberta and you won't have a problem. But that's not necessarily true, and it's also not practical or affordable. The thing with the fire is, like we mentioned earlier, is it's not the flames that come in and take out a community. It's the embers and the sparks and the burning bits of forest material that are lofted in the air above the fire front that land on communities and ignite combustibles. So the idea is to reduce the possibility of those embers and remove combustibles. So that's where Fire Smart comes in. Our plan with the fuel reduction was to reduce the ember transport and reduce the fact or the possibility of direct flame impingement. So in that regard, I say it was a success because there was no direct flame impingement in Jasper at all. The flames of the fire actually did not reach the town. And you can see, anybody, even a layman, can come around the edge of Jasper, and you can see where the trees closer to town aren't burnt as much as they are further out. And the surface fire was less intense also. So you can see that the forest fuel reduction worked. Unfortunately, you mentioned Jasper was one of the first Fire Smart communities. That's true. And actually a very active Fire Smart community, but unfortunately those embers don't play favorites. When they come in, they find something that's combustible, they will ignite it. And if it leads to a structure, that structure will burn unless there's intervention. When you get 200 homes burning at once, it's kind of hard to keep up, and that's what happened in Jasper. But we were a Fire Smart community, but not every property was Fire Smart. And the problem with, I think the biggest challenge I see with Fire Smart is you need everybody engaged, because you get one weak link, and that could be the domino that takes out the whole community. And that's what happened was you could have had 2 or 3 Fire Smart properties, but then you had one non-Fire Smart property. As soon as that got fully involved, that contributes to the next structure burning, and that next structure could be Fire Smart, but when there's a house right next to it burning, it's going to burn too, unless it's made out of concrete and metal. But so yeah, Fire Smart has its limits. Unfortunately, in Jasper, we just didn't have enough Fire Smart properties, and we had, well, it was a tremendous amount of embers coming into the community.
Yeah, I've been in that Ember shower, the Ember shower myself back in Slave Lake in 2011. So when you're being rained on, in the heat of the moment, continuous black columns coming off of homes, it's a very intense situation. But I think overall, Jasper having, emergency services having protected over 60% of the community would be considered a success and not a failure. So congrats to you and Jasper Emergency Services and all the emergency responders there that were involved for days in that work and protecting the community and the park. So we're coming up and close here now. I just want to recognize that there's a significant number of questions, so thank you very much for your interest. But in the sake of time, we're about to get the hook, I think. Hey, so I just want to end at one closing question, Greg. In your life, what is the best advice you've ever gotten? If you want to share with folks here.
That's a good one.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
When I left home, when I was 19, actually just made me think of this. I haven't thought of this for a long time. My mom said, "Watch your back." And I didn't know what she meant. But then growing up through my career, I kind of did learn what she meant. And I've always watched my back. I don't know if that's applicable, but the other thing she said was, "I don't care what you do, as long as you do good to the world." So I think that's probably what I tried to do more than anything, was to do good to the world. So
I think that pretty much highlights your career and life over the past 46 years plus, Greg, in this business. So again, folks, it's been a privilege to host this fireside chat with you, Greg. Thank you sincerely for taking the time to meet with us today. It's been a privilege sifting through the mind of somebody who's been in emergency management so long and who's dedicated their career to this service and life service. So thank you as well to our audience for your engaging participation in those questions. And Greg, we wish you the very best in your continued journey, wherever your rewired path might take you. So thank you again, Greg.
thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.